Well, today I'd like to put a good word in for unclean spirits. You know, nobody really defends them much, but I'd like to talk about unclean spirits because I think they're getting a bad reputation needlessly. There are lots of positive spirits in the Bible. There's a spirit of truthfulness, a ministering spirit, and spirits are a way of talking about strong attitudes and desires. And there were several Greek terms for spirits that were not quite right, spirits that we didn't want or that were sort of bad. And there were unclean spirits that caused disease, disability, mental illness, and social behavior. Things that were apparently beyond the control of an individual were deemed spirits. Things apparently beyond the control of an individual. And so these unclean spirits, as opposed to demons or other words that the Greeks used to talk about these things, unclean spirits, not so bad. I know it's sort of funny to talk about this, but these were sort of ordinary unclean spirits. These are not the writhing, ugly demons that you see in medieval sorts of things. They're not the movie The Exorcist, that thing, none of that. So that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about these big things. And the person in this particular story was allowed in the synagogue. So there was a person who was in the synagogue, and believe me, if you were writhing in some sort of demonic possession, they wouldn't have let you in. So this is a person that's in the synagogue, and he has a little problem. It's just unclean. It's an unclean spirit. And unclean was ritualistically unclean. So maybe they didn't do something just right that day. It could have been a fairly minor event. It could have been not too bad. The ritually unclean. It could have been even the person didn't wash their hands the right way. Literally. And so this spirit maybe was the spirit of uncleanness, and that they weren't following the rules just right. They weren't ritually pure. And so this spirit was a spirit that a person just couldn't follow the rules. They were pushing the rules a little bit. They constantly went 40 miles per hour in a 30 mile per hour speed zone. They didn't signal before they made a left-hand turn. These are the kinds of things it could have been. So I'm trying to get you to on the minimalistic side of unclean spirit. And what is this to do with us? Jesus casts out the minor unclean spirits that clutter our lives. What has this to do with our lives? What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? All of my habits are well under control. I always do exactly what I want to do, and none of my habits, none of my eating, or buying, or drinking, or smoking, or sleeping, or television, or Facebooking, or free selling, or surfing, or chocolate, or compulsive exercise, or biting my fingernails. No, I got that all under control. What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Eating fast foods too much, video games, being annoying on purpose, road rage. All these things I got under control. I choose to do all these things every time. All these habits that peck away at our life, that eat away at a full life. Our dirty little secrets that don't really hurt anybody. Maybe. Except us. What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? We're just fine. Thank you very much. It's not just about us, it's about our culture. Because our culture has these habits. The American culture has these habits that peck away at its holiness too. We imprison people that make us uncomfortable. We export war and more machines. We value things over people. We exploit nature for the comfort of a few. But, these are just habits. We've just fallen into these things, and we've chosen every time to do these things. They're not out of control at all. What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? They're just sort of bad habits. These aren't laughable demons. You see, if we took the Old Testament and the New Testament to be completely laughable, like, oh, demons, who believes in demons? You know, winged red characters coming out of people. We're scientific people. We don't do that. We don't even know what to do with this casting out of unclean spirits unless it starts having to do with the things that eat away at our lives. And then maybe we don't want to understand. What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? What have you to do with our congregation and how we might be growing into habits that grow stale and stultifying? What have you to do with us and our patterns of injustice, Jesus of Nazareth? The passage tells how Jesus confronts our broken patterns. Jesus tells us, first of all, to be quiet. Tells our disruptive spirits to be quiet. We talk too much, we rationalize too much, we dominate too much, we interrupt too much. Culturally, American culture is the obnoxious man at the world party who talks too much, drinks too much. Jesus says, could you be quiet? Personally, we defend our nasty habits with chatter in our heads. You know, it's okay if I have this cookie, or it's okay if I do this, because, really, it's not so bad. And this is going on. The talk is going on in our minds. And Jesus says, could you just be quiet about that rationalization? Because it's not fooling anybody. What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Jesus tells our disruptive spirits to leave. No visitations, no trial separations, no halfway measures. Cold turkey. Cold turkey. Which, by the way, is the name of a program you can download to make sure that you don't check Facebook too often. Oh, really? Download this program, Cold Turkey, look it up. You're about to Google it. If you have your smartphones out, put them away right now. We're going to talk about that compulsion later. But if you go and you Google Cold Turkey, you're going to find this program that says that you're out of control of your usage, and it will keep you from checking Facebook. You know, as if you can't do that on your own. You need some other program, some other spirit to help you control the checking of the Facebook spirit. This is mostly made for students who want to be able to study between 6 and 9 so that you can set times up. But Jesus says no. Now, this isn't for breaking out of alcohol or habitual addictions, because that actually can't do cold turkey, or shouldn't. They're physiological things. But for so much of the other patterns in our life, Jesus says, don't try the halfway measures. Out. And how? How does this happen? This is the most interesting thing. It's not magic. The most interesting thing about what happens to the man in the synagogue when the unclean spirits are cast out, it is because of the teachings of Jesus. It's not magic. It's not Jesus comes and goes, woof, and the spirit disappears. It's not. It's something that happens through the authority of the teachings of Jesus. It's a miracle of an impact of ideas that change somebody's life. It's not magic, it's not hypnotism. What has this to do with us? What teaching of Jesus Christ will convulse us? This church has gone through many convulsions when certain realities hit the church, when the reality hit this congregation that, we just shouldn't talk Dutch all the time anymore. Not really, it changed the whole nature. There was whole fights in the denomination about it. The church was convulsed as that spirit confronted the reality of how the church talks to the world. And this congregation early on said, well, we're going to have to talk English, I guess. And so I'm talking English. I'm not sure I know many words in Dutch at all. There's convulsions in the church when different spirits are confronted about GLBT issues, about all sorts of the ordination of women was just a whole convulsion for the church. As certain sorts of spirits were confronted in this history, when these unclean spirits are confronted, there is a convulsion. There is a distress. It is not particularly easy, but it is the teachings that do this. It is the teachings of Jesus Christ that enter into the fabric of who we are and shake us a little bit until we understand that things have to be different. Forgiveness, radical forgiveness, Repentance, we are convulsed by dramatic changes. Justice, we shudder at what this might mean for our way of life. All of these principles of Jesus, if we really understand them, if we take them in, they bring everything else around in sort of a way that ought to shake the foundations. And instead of the things that fritter away our life, instead of the compulsions that drive our lives, Jesus offers us a life that is full, a life that is holy, a life that isn't halfway. Not filled with guilt or fear, not filled with anger or retribution, not filled with things that are halfway joys, but this perfect love that casts out fear, this perfect love that casts out the unclean spirits of halfway joys. This is what God calls us to. This is the teaching that helps us judge our unclean spirits. This is the teaching that Jesus says to our unclean spirits to be quiet and to come out. This is the teaching that says life is meant to be completely and utterly full. God does not intend us to walk around guilty or limping about with ideas that have made it impossible for us to live fully. Instead, it is the power of grace that calls us joyfully into a new place. So, perhaps picture Jesus not frowning, but inviting. Oh, go away to the unclean spirit. There's something better. Go away to rigid ideas about who the gospel is for. There's something better. Go away. Go. Be silent and go away, because there is a great joy that awaits all of us. A great joy that paradoxically becomes teeny tiny little bits of bread. Teeny tiny little bits of juice that symbolize it doesn't take much to shake us and bring us into the holy. Jesus casts out the unclean spirits. This is not a story of thousands of years ago. This is a story of us sitting here and the patterns that we fall into as a church, as a country, as individuals. And this is the story of the joy that waits for us. It calls us from all of the things that hold us back. It calls us from thinking about chocolate constantly, or how mad we are at the guy next door, or all of the things that fill our life, or if I don't check Facebook by 1 o'clock, God only knows what's going to happen. Jesus calls to a richer place. And that perfect love casts out all that other stuff. In the name of the Creator, the Redeemer, and the Sustainer.